The parasha of this morning is called Parasha Mishpatim, or rather Parasha HaMishpatim, and I subtitle it Daily Sandwich. It's going to be our daily sandwich, just as the Torah says that the thesis that we put at the edge of our clothing should remind us about the commandment and the judgment and the ruling of our God, the Holy One, blessed be He, all the days of our life. So when we look at the thesis, we remember the judgment, and we remember the commandment, and we eat them like a sandwich. So it is induced in us every blessed day. So it is not just I read or I hear, it goes here and it comes out here. No, but it's a daily thing. It's every time, non-stop for the rest of our life. So the parasha of this morning is known as HaMishpatim, and it means the ruling, the judgment, or the ordinances, that God has commanded us, to do. So Parasha HaMishpatim, the judgment, is the 18th parasha of the Torah. It begins by detailing a long list of commandments concerning judicial cases which were related to Moshe at Mount Sinai. It is generally understood that all of these commandments were related to the children of Israel on the 7th of Sivan after the revelation of Adonai on the 6th of Sivan, but before Moses ascended Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. In the opinion of Rabbi Agassi, although the 10 commandments were given in the previous parasha, that was in parasha Yitro, the 44th judgment or the 44 ruling, were related in a parasha, were given period to them before Moses made the covenant of blood between Adonai and the children of Israel. Okay, the end of the previous parasha detailed how to worship Adonai and build a mizbeach and then the beginning of a parasha state. And these are the judgments you shall place before them, and then the Torah relate the 44 judgments. In other words, the beginning of this parasha is a direct continuation of the end of the previous parasha. Moreover, towards the end of this parasha, a mishbeach, that is the altar, is built by Moses, and then the covenant of blood is made. Moses teaches them how to make the mishbeach at the end of the previous parasha. The judgment or the ruling are detailed, and then the covenant of blood is made over them, and the children of Israel say, we do, and we hear. The 10 commandments are then heard, and then Moses ascended Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights to receive the tablet and the Torah at the end of this parasha. This little intro, or rather is still coming, that I'm trying to tell us here is that this parasha Mishpatim give us a long details of 44 rulings, of 44 judgment, or rather I can also say it gives us 44 ordinances. That's what I'm looking for, ordinances. So it details the 44 ordinances that God gave to the children of Israel before Moses ascended into the mountain for 40 days and 49, and before the covenant of the blood was made. And it says, and all the people, when these ordinances were given, all the people stood up in one voice and said, we will do and we will hear. So the question now is, how did the people say we will do and we will hear? Because grammatically it's not correct. Because you cannot say you are going to do when you don't know what you are going to do, right? It should be, we will hear and we will do. That is the normal way of speaking. But we understand, I said this taught us that that statement is clearly demonstrating unto us that the people of Israel, they know they know for the fact what God is requiring of them, what God wanted to do, because there's even though before God speak, before the Holy One, blessed be He, speak, we will do. Before you speak, anything you speak, we are going to do, and we are going to hear. Understand? We are going to do it, and we are going to hear it. Anything, some people say, okay, but as I said, it said that the Torah was given to different nations, and they rejected it. Because why? Because they want to do the opposite. They want to hear first and think, am I going to do it or not? Well, okay, no, this one does not conform. Thou shalt not kill. This does not conform to my way of life. I cannot accept it because I'm a killer. I can do it. Thou shalt not steal. No. This does not conform to my way of life. I can't accept it because I'm a thief. And the other one, thou shalt not worship any other god. Oh, no, I can't do this. I have a lot of gods, and I have to give them some food, So, the children of Israel were different. He said, no, we are going to, even though before God said it, we will do it. Everything we will do, and then we are going to hear. You see, they have already committed themselves, even though before it was given. They committed their soul and their mind, and this was a difference between the children of Israel and the rest of the nation. And that is why the Holy One, blessed be He, loved them a lot, because they say we are going to do whatever the Holy One said before it is being said at all. So which is that they don't count anything into consideration. Anything said, because we know that the Lord is good. They know that God will not give them a status or a commandment or an ordinances that they cannot perform. So that is why these ordinances that has been given to us, the Holy One, blessed be He, knows that we can perform it. That is why He gave it to us in the first place. If we cannot perform them, or we cannot live by that, there's no reason of giving it to us. It doesn't make sense. But He knows for sure that we as human, we as His children, we are capable, we are able to fulfill this thing. So many people say, oh, the 10th commandment is too high. It's not real. You can't fulfill them all. That is the language of the evil one. That is the language of the negative thought. That is the language of the Yeserah that wants you to do or to continue to live in sin. He wants to take you as a slave of sin forever. That's why he's telling you, oh, it's not possible. It is a lie. It is possible for us to live by the 10 words that God has given us. If it is not possible, the Holy One, blessed be He, will not give us in the first place. Because if He's giving us what we cannot do, that means that it's wicked. Right? If He gives us what we cannot, He knows for sure that we cannot do it. Why giving it to us in the first place? But because He knows that we can do it, that is why He's giving it to us, that we should live above the animalistic part of our life. We need to understand that humans are made up of physical and spiritual. The spiritual part of a human is the being. Is the being, the advanced level, the knowledge, the wisdom, the understanding. But the physical part is the animalistic part. We have lungs, animal has lungs. We have liver, they have liver. We have heart, everything. The same thing like the animal has. And this animalistic part of us, it degrades us. It makes us to be violent. It makes us to do what is evil. It makes us to be aggressive. And this is what God is talking about, that we should live above it to become a human being. Not an animal, but a human being. To be civilized. That is what God is talking about. That He is trying to give us rules and regulations, that there will be orderliness in our society. We need to understand that the world was formed from chaos, right? There was orderliness, and God loved orderliness. There must be orderliness in everything that we do. But if everything is chaotic, that God is not in a place that is chaotic. God is in a place that is calm, that is order, that is cleanliness, that is orderliness. So that is what God is trying to do here, to bring orderliness in our society. Remember, there are a lot of laws that has been before the 10th word. The Egyptian has their own code, as I said last week, right? We have the Ma'at code. The Ma'at code state about everything that is written in the Ten Commandments is also there too, except the Shabbat and the respect for your parents, which is not there. The rest is all there too. The Egyptians live according to a particular rules too. The Mesopotamian, they have their own rules too and their laws, which is also copied, which Egyptians also copy from the Mesopotamian rules. So we have all these laws because orderliness in the society is a paramount. It's very, very important. And God is giving us, God is bringing the children of Israel above them all, bringing them a step closer unto Himself, bringing it, including it, Shabbat into it, and your parents. Because if you say that you love God, you respect God, you do everything that God wants, and you don't respect your parents, it doesn't make sense. Because how can you respect God that you don't see, and you disrespect your parents that you see? How can you beat your parents, slap your parents, talk negative things about your parents, do evil things against your parents, and you come to the temple or you come to the synagogue and say you love God and start singing hallelujah? That doesn't work. You have to respect your parents first, then you can respect God that you don't see. You see, many children of nowadays, what do? Their parents sacrifice their life. Their parents sacrificed everything for them when they were young, to bring them up, send them to primary school, to secondary school, to high school, to university. They grow up, they become wealthy, they get a good job, they are wonderful. And how do they repay their parents? The parent is old, and they take the parent and put him or her in the retirement home. And I say, you know what? I don't have time. My time is taking too much. My work is taking too much time. I do this and that. La. That is wrong. You cannot take your parent. That is your own personal view. People might have their own view, but you cannot take your parent that suffered for you, that sacrificed everything in their life for you, and at the end you take them and dump them in some retirement home, and you want a stranger who does not even know them to take care of them, who does not even know their need to take care of them. They say, oh, you know what? They have doctors there, they have everything is there, everything is good, I just pay and that is it. My concern just for me, I just pay them and let them take care of my parents. You are causing yourself. That is a cause. Because you have to do to your parents according to what they did unto you. They take care of you, they sacrifice, they give you everything. Some people say, oh, my parents were not good. No. Your parents were good because they give you life. That life alone that you have, that your mama did not even think of abortion when you are hopeless, when you are helpless, when nobody can help you. It is that man, it is a woman that were there every time to raise you up. They might have their own up and down, but it is not your right as a child or as children to judge them. You cannot judge your parents. That's what God is telling us. God Himself will judge them. As far as you have life, you can make things right with them. You can make things right with God, and you can assist them and help them out. That's what God is telling us here. That we as children has no right in no form or shape to judge our parents. In this opinion, if this opinion is accepted, say Rabbi Agassi, the Torah is teaching us that the beginning and end are actually one according to the fundamental principle of the Torah understanding, the chronological sequence of one or are future and past. Torah is relevant as the Torah emanates from the eighth sphere. The Torah is a constant presence in all sense of the word. So what Rabbi Agassi is saying here, that if we accept that, if we say, okay, that is true, then he said that the beginning and the end is one. That is not different between the beginning and the end. They are one thing. They are holistic. I cannot differentiate them. They are one. And so therefore, the word, the Torah, the word Deuteronomy guidance. This guidance is constantly, should be constantly present with us for the rest of our life, as the thesis at the edge of our garment. It should always be present with us. It should always be the sandwich that we eat all the days of our life. It should always be our food, every day, every time, every second. Because if it is true and we accept that at the end and the beginning is one, as we were talking yesterday at the Erev Shabbat, we discussed yesterday about the way a rich man, a millionaire, a billionaire, the way they are born, the same way a poor man is born. Right? The way they are going to die is the same way a poor man will die. That is it. The end, the beginning, and the end is the same. It's one. You come with nothing, you are going with nothing. That's what God is saying. You come to this planet with nothing, and you will leave with nothing. I'm talking about the material things. I'm talking about the physical things. But the only thing that you can go with, the only thing that can stand forever, eternally, is your work. Is the good thing that you do. They live after you. If you are a wicked man, your wickedness will live after you. If you are a good man, your goodness will live after you. We are hearing about our forefathers, right? We are hearing about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Their good deeds lives after them, after thousands of years. And we also heard about Haman, right? Who was evil, who wanted to kill the Israelites. We also heard about the Pharaoh that does not know Joseph, who wanted to destroy the children of Israel. Their evil lived after them. We can hear and we understand it. So that's what the Torah is saying. The 44 ordinances, the 44 commandments or the 44 ordinances are an expansion of the 10 commandments given in the previous parasha. Thus, Adonai contracted the 44 commandments into 10. Thus, the gematria of today's parasha HaMishpatim is 1044. 10 and 44. The gematria of the word HaMishpatim is 1044. So if we separate them, 10 and 44 is giving us this physical example, saying that the 44 ordinances that God is giving us now, God contrasted them into 10. Or the 10 commandments that God gave, God expanded them into 44 ordinances or judgments. By performing the 44 judgments in our world, in the physical world, we elevate ourselves onto the 8th sphere. We elevate ourselves onto God. And we will discover the truth. When we elevate ourselves unto God, when God elevates us unto Himself, we discover the truth. Then we can be able to return into Kedem, into the origin. That God is saying that for a time and a time, don't worry, Adam, I will return you back into the garden. I will bring you back into Kedem. I will bring you back into the Garden of Eden. Don't be worried. You don't worry. When the time comes, I will return you back, because that is your home. So when we perform these commandments, when we perform this judgment, this 44 judgment, we are elevating ourselves into the spiritual realm. And as we elevate ourselves, and as God elevates us unto Himself, we are going to discover the truth. And who is the truth? God is the truth. And once we discover God, God will then return us into Eden. These 44 judgments, which were given by the children to the children of Israel directly after the revelation and the giving of the 10 commandments, are the first expansion and expanding or contraction of the 10 commandments. Thus, they were in the elevated status. So the discussion now, that is the introduction. Now we're going to have a deeper understanding of what the parasha of today is talking about. As I said, the parasha is called Mishpatim, which simply translates as ordinances. The portion entails laws that deal with various tort and property damages. It discusses laws of damage, of servitude, of lender and borrower, of employee and employer, that is the employers or the laborer, loss of lost item and responsibility of the finder. Many of these mitzvot that are discussed in the section of Shulchan Aruch Koshen Mishpat, but there are quite a few mitzvot mentioned that engage the purely spiritual quality of a Jew, which is known as the Hukim. Some of them deal with kosher restriction, other with our relationship with the Almighty. So this parasha actually it tells us upon the it gives us this following example: the civil law, the Hebrew bondmen, the sale of daughters, mothers, and manslaughter, killing of slave, penalty for bodily injury, death caused by an animal, a pit, an animal damaging property, stealing of a livestock, self-defense, payment for a theft, damages caused by livestock, law of custodians, the law of the borrower, about seduction and sensitivity to the helpless and abandoned, and also other laws. So these are the one that we understand, but there are some laws that is included in this parasha that if we look at it, if we try to understand it, it doesn't make sense. Some of the law that's written here, some is only purely spiritual for spiritual quality, and these are called the Hukim. That in our own understanding, we just don't understand why is it there, but God understood, or God understand why He gave us such a thing. But our job and our responsibility is to perform them, is to do them as He said, or we will do them after we are going to hear. So our job is to do them all. One verse that deals with the requirement of Shechita, that is the ritual slaughter, begins with a prelude regarding holiness. People of holiness shall you be unto me. You shall not eat flesh of an animal that was torn in the field. To the dog you shall throw it. That is Exodus chapter 22 verse 30. I repeat again. People of holiness shall you be unto me. You shall not eat flesh of an animal that was torn in the field. To the dog you shall throw it. Why is that? Why is that law? God is saying, people of holiness shall you be unto me. A special people shall you be unto me. You shall be a separated people. Any animal that is torn in the field, you shall not eat. You shall do what? You shall give it to the dog. Why that? This is part of holiness. And this is part of what is called about hygiene and cleanliness. Because those animals that have been torn in the field by a wild beast, one, we don't know the disease that that wild animal or that wild beast has, or the poison in their mouth or in their teeth or whatsoever. Then if you now take that animal that has been torn aside or apart by the beast and you take it home and you say, oh, this is easy kill. I didn't do any effort to kill it. It's just there. And you take it home and you eat it and you become contaminated and you become sick. Whose responsibility? So that is why God is saying, as our sages tells us, this is the Torah. We have to build a zayat around it, a protective fence. If the Torah is telling us to do one, our sages say, okay, in case, let's make it two. Because if we make it one and people don't understand, they go and do another thing. So let's try to make it a little bit higher. Let's make that standard a little bit higher, so that even though if the people could not be able to do it, they can be, if they cannot be able to do that higher standard, at least they'll be able to do exactly what the Torah is saying. That is the sense behind what our sage is saying, which actually make sense, to increase this standard a little bit, so that in case you cannot meet that higher standard, at least you can be able to meet exactly what the Torah is saying. There are many different types of law which the Torah commands us to follow. As I said, such as hukim are the law which elude our own understanding, which we cannot even rationalize by ourselves. They give us the opportunity to demonstrate our faith. In this one, we have faith that God asks us to do it, and we are going to do it, and that is it. We adhere to them because Adonai commanded us to do so. Period. Mishpatim are laws which make sense to us. Don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, and so on and so forth. Our parasha, as indicated by its names, deal with what? With ordinancy, with Mishpatim. Va'eleh ha-Mishpatim, chapter 21, verse 1. And these are the Mishpatim. These are the ordinances. Why does our parasha begins with the letter Vav, which means and? According to Rashi, it connects this Mishpatim to the last week parasha, which is the parasha Yitro, teachings that just as the previous parasha commandment were from Sinai, so too this Mishpatim are from Sinai. He's telling us that as the 10th commandment was given on Sinai, so the same applied to this Mishpatim. The same applied to these ordinances that God has given. They are both given on Mount Sinai. They are both given by God. So we don't have this type. We don't have to think in our mind that you know what, the 10th commandment is given by God and the Mishpatim is written by the understanding of Moshe. Okay? We don't come and say, okay, Moshe wrote the Mishpatim, so it's of a less value than the what? Than the 10 laws or than the 10 words that God speaks, right? But what Rashi is saying that both of them are given by God. That the Mishpatim, the 44 Mishpatim, is just an expansion of the 10 commandments, or the 10 commandment is the contraction of the entire 44 Mishpatim. As we know, according to the principle of the Torah deal with what? With multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So we need to understand that. It is fascinating to note that these laws are sandwiched between the Torah, two accounts of Sinai. Last week, Parashat Yitro included that the Aseret had divorced the 10th commandment. Our parasha, after detailing 53 different mitzvot, which is different commandments, conclude with, and Moses was told to ascend to Adonai. According to Rashi, this actually took place on the 4th day of Nisan before the giving of the commandment. Why were these Mishpatim placed in the middle of the Torah transmission of the event at Sinai? Let's first attempt to understand another difficulties. We are a composite of two separate beings, a spiritual being contained within a physical being. Adonai, on the other hand, is totally removed from any trace of the physical, for he exists in a domain and realms that is totally beyond our perception. How can we connect to him? That unlikely union was made possible only through the giving of the Torah. The Talmud revealed the essence of the revelation at Sinai by defining the first word of the commandment using a method called notricon. Each letter of the word becomes a word in and of itself. The word Anochi, spelled Aleph, Nun, Haf, and Yud, which means I, is broken into 4 words, each beginning with one of those letters. which begins with Aleph as Anan, Nun as Nafsha, Haf as Hasavis, and Yud as Yuhavis, which means my essence, I have written and given. I have made myself available and accessible. Through the Torah given at Sinai, we have the meeting point. We can connect. It's interesting to know that many of the different customs of Hebrew wedding are based on the event at Sinai, the wedding between Adonai and the children of Israel. All this, let me just summarize them in one word. What I'm saying is that the first word in Torah, in the Torah, according to what God is saying, which says when He was giving us the commandment, He said, "I, Anochi, is your Adonai Elohim." Elohim, which means that God is saying that He, God, is the Lord our God, and there is a system in the Talmud that we use to understand this word, for us to understand perfectly what God is talking about, developed by our sages. So that word Anochi is what is now they break it down into the letters. There are 4 letters there. They have Aleph, they have Aleph, they have Nun, and they have Haf, and they have Yud, which make it Anochi, right? So therefore, each letters, they now develop a word, each word according to these letters. And this word is Anan, Nafshah, Hasavis, and Yehavis, which is telling us that I, which is Anan, my essence, the essence of God Himself, is alright. I have written. God have written His own essence down, which is the commandment, which is the Torah. Okay? And I've given it to you. Because we need to understand that we are what? We are made up of 2 beings, right? As I said, the spiritual being and the physical being, right? But God is not physical. God is purely spiritual. So how can God connect with us? Or how can we connect with God? God now make it available. God Himself make Himself available through the Torah. He said, okay, my essence, my being, myself, my reset, I'm going to write down and I'm going to give it unto you, so that you might know me, so that you might know what I want from you, so that you might be able to understand who I am, that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out with a strong hand from the land of Egypt, that these are the ordinances and these are the commandments that you have to follow, to separate yourself from what? From being a barbaric nation. We need to understand that the nation that surrounding them, they're all barbaric, right? Because these are nations that they take a woman, they pass it from one man to another, right? They kill, they don't care. They steal, they don't care. But God is saying, you shall not do that. That your life is, you are separate. You are separate people unto me. You are a holy nation, and you will not perform the barbaric attitude of those nations. You will not do like them. You will not go and be worshiping idols. You shall worship only me, the one and true God, not the work of your hands. And that you put God on and you go and bow down and say it is your God. Where is the sense in that? Where a woman is even a cow is better than a woman. But the Torah is saying no, that women are human beings. You cannot be selling and be buying them. It is not right. You have to respect them. They are your mothers. You cannot be passing them from one man to another. No, there are no things to be shared. That's what the Torah is saying. So God is bringing the children of Israel in giving them a very high standard, a moral code, a high moral code that all the people surrounding them will see, and they will do what? And they will come on closer and worship God. They say yes, because they said for Torah is your wisdom. The Torah is our wisdom in the eyes of the whole world. When they see the way we act, when we see the way we do, they will know that we are different, that we are not the same like them, and that in essence will bring them unto God. They say, oh yeah, these are the light of the world. They give us this moral code. God Himself gave us the moral code not to be barbaric, not to be animals, not to live like animal, not to live the animalistic part of our life, but to grow up to become a being, a spiritual being, more advanced in nature, so that there will be what tranquility, there will be peace in the society, there will be joy in the society, there will be no in all this boom 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 that is going on. But that chaotic will be removed, and there will be calm and calmness. It is clear that these Mishpatim were placed in the midst of the Sinai event because they are the meat of the meeting. That is, now we can have a direct contact between God and man. So God is reaching down onto man, telling him we can have a point of contact. The Anochi Adonai Elohecha, I am Adonai your God. The opening of the word of the commandment is an instructive part of the Mishpatim, and our observance of the Mishpatim must reflect that. Anochi Adonai Elohecha, both in the way that Adonai involved himself down in a day-to-day event, and in the way that we strive to elevate ourselves up to the height of the spirituality, there is and must be this synthesis. Okay, I'm saying that the word that started the commandment, which is Anochi Adonai Elohecha, that I am the Lord your God, must always reflect in our life, day-to-day activities, in our dealing, in our business, in our work, ourselves, with our fellow men, with other peoples that we don't know, with the strangers. This basic word, this very important word, must be an instant part of our life. That says that Anochi Adonai Elohecha must always be that part, that He is God, He is the Lord our God, and we should always put that in our life and respect and obey that. Let's deal with each of these links. The Talmud states that when three judges convene for judgment, the Shekinah, which is the presence of God, is with them. Why is this necessary? The Nesivos Shalom quote the Zohar, which states, Ali ha-hashpatim, meaning these are the judgments. In here is contained the secret of, he said Aleha Mishpatim, Dane Raza de Gilgota, meaning these are the judgments. In here is contained the secret of Gilgal. And what is Gilgal? Gilgal is the Hebrew term for reincarnation. The idea that after death, a person, neshama, that is the soul of a person, might return to this world in a new human body in order to accomplish something that had been neglected, or to correct an error that had been done. How does this apply to the Mishpatim or the laws? Let's elaborate this by an example. Gilgal, meaning reincarnation. So how does this imply with our what? With our today parasha, with the Mishpatim? A person had been to a rabbinical court. It's an example, right? Which had decided against him, obligating him to pay the disputed sum of money. He approached his rabbi with the following dilemma: I accept that any judgment reached by these judges is true, as it revealed the will of the Torah and thereby the will of Adonai himself. At the same time, I know that I don't owe him the money. The judges base their decision on the testimony given before them, but I know the truth. I was there. I don't owe him money. How, he asked his rabbi, can these two truths be resolved? this man went to a court of law, right? The court of law in Hebrew is called Elohim. It's the same God. It's the same word for God. The court of law in Hebrew is called Elohim, because the Shekinah of God is upon the judges. And this man went for the judgment, and the judgment was against him, that he has to pay a sum of money to somebody. And this man is saying, I know the truth, I did not owe this man a penny. But still yet the judges give that judgment based on the evidence that they have before them. And the guy said, I know the truth because I was there, I did not owe him anything. So he went to his rabbi to ask, how is this possible? How can these two be true? The judge had said the truth, and me that was involved, I know the truth. So how can we rectify these two things? The rabbi explained to him, that is his rabbi explained to him, that in a previous Gilgul, that is in a previous life, he had owed this person money. When one leaves this world owing money to another, he must return in order to settle this debt. The judges were, I assume, unaware, obligating him to pay the sum of money which wasn't owed based on the present litigation, but was in fact the epitome of the old debt. Both were true. He didn't own and he did own. Mishpatim contained the secret of Gilgul. The Shekinah is with the judges. The Anochi Adonai Elohecha is an instinctive part of the Mishpatim and all that transpire in our daily lives. Seemingly unaware and inexplicable event might be the very reason why we are presently here in this world and might be a ticket to the next. Vaile ha-amishpatim. The letter Vav and connect the two. Both are from Sinai. The Mishpatim are smack in the middle of the event of Sinai. They are the word that is sandwiched in between. Together they produce the meeting point of heaven and earth, the marriage between us and our God. So his rabbi told him, in your previous life you owe money to this man, and that is why the decision of the judges are like this. The guy was shocked. This is the secret of the Gilgul. We have to understand that reincarnation do occur. Whatsoever you did not achieve at this time, you have to do it again. The mistake that you did not fix, you have to do it again. You have to fix it. So he's telling us, if we own people's money, try to rectify it, because this might be your ticket to what? To the next world, to the kingdom of God. You can't keep on coming here, coming and coming and coming. You have to increase. You have to evolve. You have to grow to the next world. So how do you grow? How do you go into a higher level of existence? If you keep on coming and coming and coming, keep on making mistakes, keep on coming. He said that if you do not find your wife, you keep on coming and coming and coming until you find the bone of your bone and the flesh of your flesh. The Torah also speaks that if you hold money, you keep on coming here until you pay your debt. If you do something wrong, you keep on coming until you make it right. So for how long are you going to keep on coming? 100 times, 200 times? When are you going to evolve into a higher existence of life? It's a question that we have to answer ourselves. So in closing, let now see how a Mishpatim must reflect the Anochi Adonai Elohecha. Okay? After the giving of the commandment, we were told, Shevu lachem lechem. Return to your tent. In the practical sense, the show is over and there won't be an encore. In a halachic sense, or in a halachic sense, we learn that the material relation which has been forbidden or suspended for 3 days period to the giving of the commandments were once again permitted. The Kotzer Rabbi explained it in a different ways. Return to your tent, bring it back with you. It's easy to be on this level while hearing and seeing the word of Adonai. Now apply it and maintain it while back in your tent. Make it a part of your everyday life. So what am I saying? I'm saying here that after the word was given, he said, I am the Lord thy God. Now return to your tent. The show is over, right? The fire, the mountain, burn, everything is over, right? Now go back to your tent. One of our sages interpret this that, okay, you can now go back to your normal way of life. Which means, remember that 3 days before the commandment, there was a law given that all men should not touch a woman. They should set aside. So sages is saying now, after all this show is over, you can go back with your normal relationship with your wife, with your normal way of life, your businesses, and go on. Everything is over. But another of our rabbi give us another example. He's saying unto us that all these things that you hear, or all these things that you heard from the mouth of God Himself, take it home to your tent and do according to it. Because it is easy to be in what inferior, right? Oh, God is speaking, yeah. Oh, the Holy One is speaking. That is fantastic. The fire is burning, the mountain is shaking, the thunder is sparking, right? Everybody is awesome. This is awesome sight. I want to remain here forever and forever. But you have to go back to the reality, and the reality is the physical world. Not just only hearing the word alone. I want to remain all my life in the yeshiva. I want to remain all my life in the synagogue. But you have to work, right? You have to feed your children. You have to pay your rent. You have to pay your bill. But how do you do that? By taking the word that you hear in the synagogue, in the temple, with you home and apply it in your life. We don't just only hear alone and we go home. No. But we have to hear and live by the word. We have to apply this word in our daily life, in our everyday blessed life, because this is extremely very, very important. But hearing alone, it doesn't do you any good. But living by it makes us different. In truth, the way to maintain this mishpatim on a consistent base is by keeping focus on Anohi Adonai Elohecha. The pasuk or the verse states, Midvada Sheka Takot 23 verse 7. From falsehood distance yourself. The Talmud in Marcos chapter 24a state that Rabbi Sifra fulfilled King David's word, which is in Tehillim chapter 15 verse 2. That one must speak the truth even in one's heart. Rashi relates the event through which Rabbi Safra earned this accolade. He had an item for sale and was approached by a potential buyer while he was citing the Shema. Involved in his prayer and being unable to respond, Rabbi Safra seems to be ignoring him. Thinking that the offer was too low, the buyer raised his bid, only to be stonewalled again and again. After making his final exorbitant offer, which happened to coincide with the end of the rabbi's prayer, the rabbi nodded in agreement. The buyer began to count out the money, only to be told that the price would be original amount offered. Rabbi Sifra explained to his astounded buyer that in his heart he has agreed to the original offer. Accepting any more money than that would be dishonest. He spoke the truth in his heart. The Torah said that we should speak the truth in our heart every time. You shall speak the truth in your heart. That means you have to distance yourself from falsehood. You have to distance yourself from lies. You have to distance yourself from that which does not glorify. So Rashi gave us an example of this rabbi that was selling goods, and there was a buyer that came, right? And the buyer wants to buy things, and at that moment the rabbi was reciting his Shema in the afternoon. So the buyer thought that the rabbi disagreed with the original price that he has giving it, for example, $10. And the buyer keep on raising the amount, okay, 15, 20, 30, 40. And that coincide with the final offer, coincide with with the final prayer of the Shema Israel. So the rabbi said, okay, yes, I accept. So the buyer was counting $40, in which the rabbi said, no, the original amount that I agreed with was $10. So he returned back $30 to him. The buyer was so shocked. So it shows that the rabbi in his heart has spoken the truth, because he has already accepted the $10, but he cannot say yes because he was reciting a prayer at that time. So this is what he's saying, that we should distance ourselves from a falsehood. But if it were some other people, they'll say, oh, this is a game. I take the $40, I put him in my pocket. What will a $30 difference do in your life? That's what the rabbi is saying. Once you speak the truth in your heart, you should abide by it. You shouldn't say, because this is an opportunity for me to make millions of dollars, when the original amount you agree for is what? 100,000. And somebody is giving you 100. Oh, say, yeah, this is a lot of money, it's good. You should always stand to say the truth in your heart. Only a person with a firm, tangible feeling of Anohi Adonai Elohecha will be able to live life accordingly. We all know on an intellectual level that we will gain absolutely nothing through dishonest means. Why would Adonai reward a person and having benefit through rebellions against his word? That's on an intellectual level. When the possibility of profit is before us, we tend to ignore and observe facts and act somewhat differently. Return to your tent, apply it to your daily life, connect to Adonai Elohecha. That's what I'm saying. So please, let's return to our tent. Let's return to our daily life. Let's return into our home. Let's return to our daily activities and try to connect with our Redeemer, with our God, with our Savior. All the word that you hear this morning, please take it home and apply it in your life, because there is no benefit if you sit down and you hear and it goes in here and comes out here and you go home and remain the same. Why coming to the synagogue? Why wasting your time? Why coming and be listening to the rabbi every Shabbat if you are not ready to apply it to your daily life? So what I am saying, I am encouraging us individually and collectively to please, and for those who are watching on the internet, to please apply this word that you are hearing in your daily life. He said, I am the Lord thy God. This is a very intriguing part of the word of the Mishpatim, stating that the Lord is our God, that we should fear him, that we should do that which is just and right, and try to live according to the Mishpatim, to these ordinances that he has given us. Parasha Mishpatim. Shabbat Shalom.